All right, so the logic options in Testable, the branching options in Testable, we try to implement them as intuitively as possible, and we think we did a good job at that. So hopefully that's going to be very easy to show you how you can use them in your studies. So you can use conditional statements, you can use conditions to direct participants along different branches in your experiment, to repeat certain trials, also to redirect participants to other links, other websites, or to end the study before, if, for example, a participant doesn't fulfill a certain criterion, or whether the participants rush in through the trials and so on. So I think they are not very reliable, those participants, and so on. Okay, so we implement the logic with two columns, the columns if and then. I'm just going to increase a bit the zoom of this file. Okay, so I have already this trial file here, and you see we have 7 trials in which we present one image with an intertrial interval 500 milliseconds, so that we can observe very well when a new trial starts. Then we have the responses by pressing keys 0 or 1, and I added some text here to appear above each image so that we can easily follow whether the logic is working or not and how it works. Okay, so we'll see above each image the row number where that trial is found in the trial file. Okay, so these two columns are the ones used for logic. In if, we specify the condition, and in then we specify the action. So we can start with this very easy condition, if 1, then 5. That means if the response is 1, then go to trial in row 5. So the experiment should jump here. Okay, we can also add an else condition with a semicolon. So if we have something like that, 5 semicolon 7, that means if participants press 1, they go to trial 5, else they go to trial 7. We can have that 7, we can have that else condition, or we can leave it empty. Actually, let's do both, just that you can see. So we will press 1, and then we go to row 5, and then in row 5, let's have another condition and say, if 1, I go to 6, otherwise I go to 8. Okay, and we'll see how these two conditions work. So let's upload this trial file. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, no. All right, so we start with row 2. If we press 1 here, then we should go to row 5. And this is what happens. Okay, in row 5, if we press 1, we go to 6, otherwise we go to 8. So let's press 0, the other possible response, to see what happens. I press 0, and then I go to row 8. And then I continue, nothing happens. So I go to the, actually to the end of the experiment, because this was the last trial. Okay, so that's pretty easy. At the action here, I can specify also a label. So I can say, if 1, then go here, and otherwise go there. Oops. So otherwise go, I have this shortcut in my computer, so let's do it like that. But then I have to assign these labels to the different trials. So if I have a label here for this trial, so trial found in row 4, and there we have it here. Okay, then let's save this. Upload it. And it just works like you would expect. So if we press on 1, we go to the label here, so row number 4. Okay, so that's exactly what happens. Okay. We can also specify a relative action. So the trials where we should go in relative terms to the current trial. So let me illustrate how you can do that. So let's say if 1, so if I press 1, then go forward 2 trials. And let's have the next one. If we go forward 2 trials, so in row 7, if 0, go backwards 6 trials. Okay, so let's see how this works. Once we get to row 5, we will move 2 trials forward to row 7, and then once we press 0 here, we'll go 6 trials back. So that should be trial 2, 3, 4. Let's put 5 here because 6, I think it's too much, and we don't have that many. So obviously, you have to make sure that the actions are possible in your trial file. So let's upload this. Okay. So now we just go all the way to row 5. And now if I press 1, I should go 2 trials forward. So yes, I go to row 7. And if I press 0, then I go to row 2. I go back 5 trials. Okay. So in terms of actions, that's about it. You can also have an action that says end. So that's for ending the experiment. And you can also have a link here. So if you want to redirect participants to a link, you can also have something like that. Let's say redirect them to the Testable website. Okay. If you have an action with nothing here, no condition, so that action is going to be executed no matter what. Let's move this a bit forward. So move it here so that we can demonstrate. Okay. Row 3, and now if I press 1, the experiment should end. Okay. All right. What else? Yes, for the relative sending of participants to different trials, let's demonstrate that. So let's say +2, and then here if I have 0, let's say -2. So obviously, there is a question, what happens in case we randomize trials, right? So if you are using randomization of the trials, let's say all these trials will be presented in a random order. The best thing to do is to use labels if you know exactly where you want to direct the participants. If you don't know exactly where you want to direct the participants, you should use this relative positioning because this relative positioning takes into account also the randomized order. So +2 here means go forward 2 trials in the randomized order that was created at the start of the experiment. Or -2 here means go backwards 2 trials in the order that was actually presented during the experiment. So it doesn't have to be row 3 here. It's going to be any row that was presented 2 trials before this trial, in case we have the randomization. The if conditions can also be specified with correct or incorrect labels. So let's say if my response is correct, or let's say if my response is incorrect, then 0. That means if my response is incorrect, then stay on the current trial until I get it correct. If we use this, correct or incorrect, we have to also have a column in which we define the correct responses. So let's say in our case, all the time 1 is going to be the correct response, right? So basically here, incorrect is 0. So if I press 0, I'm going to keep on repeating this trial until I get it right. So let's demonstrate these situations as well. Okay. So I'm going to check a question, I think, or a chat. Okay, so that's exactly the question. How can we repeat the same trial if the given answer is incorrect, for example? So that's exactly what I'm demonstrating now. All right, so that's the experiment with randomized trials, right? So it happens that first we see row 6. Do we have anything in row 6? We don't have any conditions specified, so let's go forward. So we go to row 5. In row 5, we do have a condition, and it says, if 0, go backwards 2 trials. In this case, it's not gonna work very nicely because we don't have, but let's try to see what happens. We don't have 2 trials yet. We only had 1 trial, okay? So if I press 0, the experiment is just gonna terminate. So let's try it again. Maybe the randomization is gonna work in our favor this time, and we can illustrate how we can go backwards 2 times. So row 3, first time, if I press 1, I go forward 2 trials. That doesn't mean row 5. It means whatever is 2 trials forward in the randomized order. So, well, it happened to be row 5 in this case, just by chance. And then in row 5, if I press 0, again, I go back to 2 trials, and I don't have enough trials here. The stars are against me for the demonstration, so I'm going to press 1 so that we continue for now. And then row 2, nothing here. Then row 6, again, nothing. Then we have row 8. In row 8, nothing. Then we have row 4, no condition, and that's it. Okay, let's modify this so that we don't have these surprises anymore. Let's say that first we want an instruction screen. Okay, let's write something here. Something, that's fine. And then we need to modify this because now this is row 3. Okay, and let's go, let's have 10 rows. Okay, so, and just to be safe, let's make this -1. And this one we should have 0 like a text. Okay, so let's try this one now. Okay. Something, then we start with row 9. Nothing there. We have row 6. So the conditions are in row 6. Okay, so now if I press 0 for row 6, I should go back 1. Remember, the previous trial was row 9, right? So if I press now 0, it goes to row 9. And that's because of the condition that we had here. Okay, now we are at 9 again. We press 1. It's going to take me again to 6 because that's the pre-randomized order that we had at the beginning. Now I'm going to press 1 so that I go forward. Then it's row 10. I press 1 again. Then row 8. Here, if it's incorrect, I stay on this trial until I get it correct. So if I press 0, I have row 8. If I press 0, still row 8. If I press 0, still row 8. If I press 1, then I move forward to row 5. Okay, and row 5, nothing. Row 7, nothing. Row 3, nothing. And row 4, it was going forward 2 trials with 1. I don't want to do that, so I press 0. But that was the end of the experiment anyway. So that's how it works. So we can use the response, the actual response in the condition. We can also use correct or incorrect, but we need to make sure that actually it's possible to compute this, correct or incorrect. So we need this column key with the definition of what is the correct answer. And we can also use RT, the response time. So let's say, let's stop the randomization for now. And let's say that now I want to repeat this trial if the RT is below 500 milliseconds. So I can have these operators here. So then I'm just going to say 0 here, okay? or I can have a combination of conditions. So if the response is correct and RT is higher than 1000 milliseconds, okay, then I go here. Otherwise, I end the experiment. So let's define the label here like that. Okay, so if I'm responding correctly and the RT is longer than 1 second, I will go here to row 8. Otherwise, the experiment is going to end. And we're also going to see this condition. So if I respond very fast, I will stay on row 4 until it takes me more than 500 milliseconds to provide my response. So let's upload it. Okay, so for row 4, I'll try to be very fast a few times so that you see that it's going to repeat the same trial. You see, if I respond very fast, it's still row 4. If I wait a bit and I press 1, then it keeps on going to row 5. Okay, then we have the other condition in row 6. If it's correct and more than 1 second, so it's already more than 1 second, and if I press correct, then I move to row 8, which was where the label here was. Okay, so that works as well. Okay, so we have the possibility to use the response time, and correct, incorrect in the conditions here. We can also combine conditions with and, or. So we can also have an or operator here. So we can have if correct or RT longer than 1000 milliseconds. We can also use that. And we can also compute the response and the RT over a number of trials. So not only take into account the response in the current trial, but look backwards and compute the response for the past few trials or responses in previous trials. So in this case, let's say we go here, we have 4 trials before. So in this case, I want to compute the mean, let's say, from -3 trials up to the current trial. So if this mean is less than 1, meaning I have at least one response that is not 1, then I want to end the experiment. Okay. Just for illustration, we're not going to get to that because we're going to end the experiment probably before, but just to show you, we can also use functions sum. We can also use mean, maximum, modal, and median. So we have mean. Here we have maximum, and you can use also modal. Okay, and this works not only for response, it also works for RT. But first, let's see how it looks like. So, okay, if for the first 4 trials I have at least a 0, and that's what I'm going to demonstrate, then the experiment should end here. Okay, so let's re-upload the trial file. Okay, I'm guessing it finished, yeah. All right, and oops, I then need to, okay, let me move this windows a bit and access this. Okay. So I'm going to press 3 times 1, but the 4th time it's going to be a 0. Okay, so that's going to end the experiment. Let's do again the same. So now we're going to get to row 7 because I'm going to press 1 to all of them to see that the experiment doesn't stop in this case. And then it's going to stop here. Actually, it's not going to stop here because we forgot to specify any action here. So it just keep on going. But just to show that it doesn't stop at row 7 when I press all the time once. So it keeps on going. Okay. And if I want to use RTs, it's exactly the same, only that in these ones I just replace response with RT, and then it should work exactly the same. Well, we have to make sure that the condition makes sense. So let's say 1000 here, 1100, right? If the mean RT for the past 4 trials is less than 1.1 second, then the experiment is going to end. So let's show that as well, actually. So let's do the experiment very, very fast. Okay, so I'm going to press pretty fast the key, and then you see that the experiment finishes here. Okay, and the last thing to demonstrate is that you can have also these numbers computed over a different numbers of trials, not a range necessarily, but you can have something like RT in 3 trials before, 2 trials before, and the current trial. So in this case, it's just going to look at these 3 trials, -3, -2, and the current one, and compute the mean over these 3 trials, not the whole range. Okay, I think that's pretty much it about the logic. Let me see if there are any questions. I can see one here. Can you link to a trial that you only want to occur given a set response? For example, if a response is correct, then that can ask a further question before going back to the original set of questions. Otherwise, not. Yes, so you can do that. You just have to use your imagination, but you can program quite a lot using this syntax that we have here for if and then. So in the case that was presented, let me see, was it a correct response or incorrect response? So let's say if a response is correct, okay, then you get asked an extra question. So in this case, let's say I respond correct here. So if correct, then go to extra question. And then the extra question is going to be here. Okay, let's delete everything else. So that's row 11. Actually, I'm just going to name it extra so that it's obvious. Okay, so if I respond correct here, I'm redirected to extra, but then I don't want the experiment to finish. I want to go back to where I was. So that's row 5, right? So let's say start or second part, let's say. Okay, then what I can do is to have here second part. If I provide a response, let's say 1, or if I don't respond anything, if I leave this blank, then it's going to take me there no matter what. Let's say if I respond 1 in this case, then I go back to the second part, okay? But then you go here, and all the participants reach this point, and you want them to stop here, so they should end the experiment. You have to remember to also add an end here. So in this case, the experiment is going to end here. And that's just an extra trial that is going to be seen only by participants who answered correct here. Let's see how that works in practice. So if we upload the trial file, right? So we had the condition in row 4. So I have to press 1, and then I'm going to be taken to the extra question. So if I do that, you see, now I see the extra question, and now I should be taken back to the second part of the experiment. Only that didn't happen, and you know why? Because I had the second part here, and it should be in the label. So you see, mistakes can happen all the time. So the experiment just finished because it couldn't find this label. So I have to make sure that, yeah, I position all the information in the right columns. So let's do it again. Now we have go to extra, and then go to second part. Okay, now it should be fine. Let's re-upload. If you have any other questions, please ask. And I will still have 2 minutes to respond. So row 4, I press 1, I go to extra, and now if I press 1, it should take me back to the second part. Again, we made a mistake, so we don't have the right label. So best is just to copy this label and put it here. Okay, so the program cannot infer what we are thinking. It needs the correct information in the trial file. Okay, let's double check again. Should be fine this time. And then we end on a high note with this experiment working. If you have any questions afterwards, feel free to email us at contact@testable.org, and we'll respond SAP and try to help you to design the experiments that you like. So row 4, I press 1, then extra, and then I press 1 again, and it still doesn't work. Do we have the labels right? We do. Oh, because I pressed 0. So we can just remove that, and I will edit after that at the end of this video. So you're going to see it on YouTube when it's recorded and uploaded to YouTube. So you're going to see that this one works. 2 other very short questions. Can it work when the set is random or not? Because you don't know where to route it back in from the extra question. Right, so you have to consider that as well. It's gonna work with labels. So if you can get around the randomization problem or complications by using labels, then it's fine and it's gonna work. Otherwise, not. So there are a few things to consider when you program using the logic. Okay. So that was it for this webinar, and I hope to have you again in the audience for the other webinars and learn more about Testable and how you can use Testable. Bye-bye.